All right, thank you for listening to another episode of Remake Rewind. I'm Mike, as always. I got my buddy Alex. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm a little nervous. We've got our election results tonight. We're recording on a Tuesday. The episode will drop tomorrow, Wednesday, on Patreon, and then Friday will go out to everyone else. But yeah, we've got our recall election, and I'm a little nervous about it.
Yeah, me too. By the time you're listening to this, we'll either, I don't know.
We'll either be exactly the same status quo, or we're going to be having a sense of impending doom for the next year and a half.
Yeah.
So, but that's not what we're here to talk about. What this podcast is about is we talk about movies that have been remade or rebooted, talk about the original, talk about the new one, and we don't necessarily say which is better, but it's really just about deciding whether or not the remake should have happened, if it's added anything to cinema, if it did anything, worthwhile. Was it worth making? Was it worth revisiting the characters or story that we've seen before? So this one, it's middle of September. But we're going to kind of start our October Halloween series early. We're going to be talking about Confectionery Man. No,
Confectionery
Candyman.
person.
Yep, confectionery person. No, we're going to be talking about Candyman. Candyman came out in 1992, and then we're going to be talking about the new one, the Jordan Peele produced Candyman that just came out. That one's both a sequel and a reboot with some prequel elements. It's a very unique kind of movie, so we'll be talking about that. But a little birdie told me that you have not seen the original one, even though you claim to be a horror guy.
Wow. That's, you're really calling me out there. You're putting my stuff out into the streets. I was 7 when it came out, so a little young. And it was just one of those ones that sort of flew under the radar for me.
To be fair, I have seen this one, but I saw this at a slumber party in 1999. When I was like 10 years old, 10 or 11. But I have a fond memory of this movie. Now, granted, watching this as we were going through it, the only part of the movie I remembered was the very, very end of the movie, which we'll get into, but literally the last scene of the movie is the only thing I remembered. But there was a slumber party that I went to, and the guy who hosted it was, for whatever reason, this was a kid that I really wanted to be friends with, even though he wasn't a really good dude, but I just wanted to be friends with him for whatever reason.
Sure.
We'll call him Brian. But he ended up stealing all my Animorph books. So I'm very, very sore about that still.
If anybody has information on Brian, you can call into the podcast.
Yeah. But we watched this movie and he wanted to rent it. His stepdad put it on for us. And he ended up crying in the middle of the movie and begging his stepdad to turn off the movie. And his stepdad's like, no, all your friends are enjoying this. Quit being a bitch and watch the movie. But he cried the whole movie.
Is that before or after Animorphs?
This is well before. So he asked if you can borrow some of the books.
Took revenge on you.
Yeah, he took a couple of my books and then he moved away. Literally 3 days later, moved.
He exacted his vengeance for being humiliated.
I know, right? I wonder if he stole a little something from everybody who was at that party. I'd actually feel a little bit better about it if that was the case.
Yeah, because he's just a lonely guy and he wants mementos from his friends or people that he thought were his friends. That's all he had.
So getting into this, at the top, we both recognize that we are white, cis, heteronormative males in this society, and both of these movies take on race relations in America. Definitely Jordan Peele probably takes that to a further extreme, so obviously our opinions on these matters don't weigh as heavy. We'll do our best to talk about this in a respectful tone and manner, and from our perspective, obviously is not as important as what he's trying to do. But, Jordan Peele makes these movies that have mass appeal and has these messages in it because he wants people like us to see what it's like to be, black in America. But that being said, if we do say anything that might be incorrect or, might offend somebody, that's not our intention. We really just are going into this as people who are enjoying the movie and are trying to understand what our fellow citizens are going through in America today. So we are going into this with open ears, open hearts. So if there's anything we say that's uncouth or incorrect, or you want to tell us, something, by all means reach out. We're not gonna get upset because we are told that we don't understand something. So just that being said, we're just gonna throw it out there. We're gonna talk about these movies, but we are 100% open to hearing anything that anybody has to say about these movies and race relations in America. That's not really what this podcast is about, but we want to be inclusive and just know that we are very accepting people, and we're gonna get on with that down note. We're gonna get back into the movies and talk about it.
On that down note, we're gonna get into these down notes.
But yeah, do you want to summarize the first one, or you want to summarize the second one?
I'll do the second one because I haven't opened your email with the synopsis yet.
No problem. All right, so I'll summarize this first one. So, Candyman, 1992, directed and written by Bernard Rose. This is based off a short story by Clive Barker, who you guys may know for the Hellraiser series and various other properties. But this movie is essentially Bloody Mary. It just kind of plays off that kind of urban legend, but essentially what this is about is there's like a grad student named Helen Lyle, played by Virginia Madsen, who's going to be coming up in a future episode pretty soon because she was in Dune. Anyway, but she plays a grad student who's investigating urban legends, and her theory is that urban legends are created by lower income neighborhoods or rough neighborhoods to kind of cope with the terrible things that happen in their neighborhoods by shifting blame to a supernatural entity or being, so that way they don't have to cope with the reality that humans are terrible and their neighbors are terrible. So she goes into the infamous Cabrini Green housing projects to try to investigate the urban legend of Candyman, and basically opens up Pandora's box and releases Candyman by saying his name 5 times in a mirror. And it's basically white privilege getting punished, I think, is a really simplified way of saying this.
Yeah. It's hard. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about like the new movie, and I don't want to start comparing them yet necessarily.
Yeah. And I'm torn on that because
I will say the new movie is white privilege getting punished.
Oh, for sure.
The first one feels a little bit more,
there's
vague.
More subtext in this one. It's more under the surface, like it's not on the surface. With the Jordan Peele one, it is very on the surface. It's very, and I'm thinking, like, I was reading my notes earlier today, going back through these, and I'm definitely seeing more of that. I didn't notice it. Like, there's obviously race issues in the movie, but I'm noticing it more going through and reading my notes. But yeah, I mean, like, really, the crux of this movie is Helen, a white woman, living in Chicago, living in a nice area of Chicago, married to a college professor, beautiful apartment, has everything she needs, feels entitled that she can just...
Sorry, and the apartment was literally meant for the black people in the community, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a housing project that they realized was in too nice of a location, so they fixed it up for, air quotes, white people, and sold it off as condos.
Yep. But then she goes into this Cabrini Green housing project and is just walking around like she owns the place and she can do anything. And she's breaking and entering in various times. And she's like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. And she's telling like people who are calling her out on it, it's fine. I'm just writing a paper. It's okay. And then she ultimately gets punished for it. Like, everybody who's around her gets punished for it because of her actions. So, that's pretty much the crux of the movie, is she doesn't believe in this urban legend, and she doesn't believe in magic. And even though everyone around her is like, maybe don't, it's just don't do it.
Yeah,
but
she's messing with stuff that she doesn't understand.
Yeah. And so she summons Candyman, and it doesn't happen immediately. So she feels like vindicated because Candyman doesn't come and kill her immediately. But he ends up kind of stalking her throughout the movie. And I do have questions about his motives. So basically, once she summons him, everybody around her gets killed. Her best friend gets killed. A dog gets killed. A baby. Like, the one person who is nice to her in Cabrini Green, who kind of like understands what she's trying to do, and is nice to her, her kid gets kidnapped by Candyman. And then everybody just around her eventually gets killed by Candyman. What I didn't understand was Candyman, when he approaches her for the first time, he says something along the lines of like, with your doubt, you have ruined my congregation. People don't believe in me anymore. Right. And so I'm losing power, essentially. And so he wants to
I don't feel like we're ever shown that, though.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I never understood.
I think what it's referring to is that she told the little kid, Candyman's not real. And the kid was like, Candyman's not real? And then I think like off screen, he goes and tells his friends. But it's very like,
Oh, maybe.
that's sort of my problem with this movie is it plays kind of fast and loose with
And I guess
what people's motives are and like what's actually going on.
That gang member who's also using the image of Candyman, like he carries a hook around and then she gets him arrested. So I guess maybe the town thinks that maybe there really isn't an urban legend. It was just various gang leaders pretending to be Candyman.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, some of that could have been on screen.
Yeah, I agree. So he decides he wants to use her as an example, and he's like, your life will be the sacrifice that's needed to carry my legend forward. But then he also kidnaps Anthony, the baby.
But like, how?
Yeah, that's what. Now, I mean, I guess if like it would make more sense if she got killed in front of a bunch of people by him and people see it. But his grandmaster plan is there's an annual bonfire in the projects.
Yeah.
And he wants to take her and the baby and all die in the fire where people really aren't going to see. I don't understand how that would work.
Why frame her for the murders and people just think that she did it, which is ultimately what happens.
Yeah. That didn't make really any sense to me at all.
Yeah, and the new movie talks a little bit more about the baby being a sacrifice, right?
Yeah, but even that, like, the sacrifice for what? Like, to what means? Like, as far as everybody knew, she kidnapped and killed the baby.
Yeah, exactly. And it also, like, wasn't clear to me at the end when he reneges on his promise to her to let the baby go. Like, that felt like I didn't pick up that that's what they were doing until after I think I was meant to realize it.
Right. And then, like, one of the other things, and it's revealed very late, is that, I mean, we find out his backstory fairly, like, I'd say, like, towards the middle of the movie, like the beginning middle of the movie, like the beginning third of the film. Another example of her kind of privilege and her feeling like she's entitled to things, but she gets mad at her husband, who's like a professor. I don't know what field this is, if this is literature or history or what. He's a professor of something, and he starts teaching about urban legends, and she gets pissed. She's like, you weren't supposed to teach about urban legends until next month, so I'd have an opportunity to write my paper. Now everyone's going to think like you helped me with my paper.
And he's like, I have a curriculum. Like,
you're right, exactly. Yeah,
I don't understand why that conversation happened then, by the way, because they clearly talked about it.
Right. It's weird. And then he has a dinner with this like other professor who is an expert on urban legends, who's literally written a book about Candyman.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm going to bury you. And he's like, bitch.
That's
like, do you know the story of Candyman? And she's like, well, no, not really. And he's like, how the fuck are you going to bury me if you don't even know the origins of the story? Yeah. And then we get the detailed thing.
What do you mean bury him? Aren't you just going to write a better paper? That doesn't mean you're going to bury him. You're not proving that he's wrong.
Right. And he's not even claiming that
they say bury like 10 times too.
Yeah. And he's not even claiming that like the legend is real. Like he's saying, here's the urban legend. Here's where I think the origin of the story came from.
Yeah.
But he's not saying like, oh yeah, if you say Candyman in the mirror 5 times, you're going to get killed. Like he's not saying that part's true. He's just saying like, here's the legend. And
she's
where
acting
it came
like
from.
she's disproving the theory of relativity or something.
Yeah, it's fucking weird. But he tells us the story. That's like the biggest exposition dump we get, is he gives us the story that, you know, Candyman was the son of a former slave, and his father like invented some machine that made it where they can mass produce shoes quicker, so they became very rich, and then he was able to go to all the fanciest schools and become an artist, and he actually became out a really sought out artist across the country making portraits for rich white people. And then he fell in love with one of these rich white women. The father found out she was pregnant and had him murdered by a lynch mob, and he was beaten, tortured, covered in honey, stung to death by bees, had his hand cut off, replaced with a hook, and then burned to death. Like, it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah. What's the purpose of replacing his hand with a hook?
I don't know.
It comes up in the second movie too, and I just feel like, why? Like, what? I don't even understand what the symbolism is.
I don't know either. And you know, maybe that's a cultural thing that we don't know. I don't know. If anybody knows why they would put a hook in a black man that they just tortured and killed, please let us know, because I generally don't understand why they did that. But he gets the name Candyman because as he was, you know, all these people start watching, like the whole town gathered to watch them kill this guy. And like the children screamed because they can smell like the honey, that it smells like candy. So they started screaming, Candyman, Candyman, Candyman. What I don't understand, another thing I don't understand, is who figured out this legend? Like, who figured out that, like, who's going into a mirror and saying Candyman 5 times?
Yeah. It's not very clear, is it?
Well, yeah. Like, how did that happen? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, who's that? Have you
I
ever
don't have
gone
an
in the
answer for
mirror
that.
and randomly just said somebody's name 5 times? Like, even somebody like
Both of these movies, I really enjoyed both of these movies.
so did I.
And so we are nitpicking here, but there's stuff like this where I'm just like, it feels like it's missing an important piece of connective tissue.
Right. And like, and I forget the second one more because at least it does try. Like, it shows an origin of why some people did it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into that. But like this one, like, I just can't. It's hard to suspend your disbelief when there's just a few things that take a huge leap of logic to make sense of. But yeah, I mean, overall, like, this movie's pretty short. Like, it's paced really well. It's visually really interesting. There's some really weird shots with Candyman. I think it's a really creepy movie throughout. Like, I think it's a fantastic film.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of this movie, and something that I think was really smart, how much they're using different types of architecture in different parts of the city to represent oppression and white supremacy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the movie takes place at the is it Northwestern College?
Yeah.
The big fancy school that Helen's at, and it's got these like beautiful buildings, and like there's one specific I guess the library, I don't know, whatever the center building is, and it's like dug into the ground, and it's got these like big steps, and it's a big square, like you can see it from miles above. It's gorgeous, and there's a bunch of overhead shots of it, and then all of the Cabrini Green inside and outside shots are just like, it's almost brutalist building. Like, it's big, square, ugly, dirty shit, and inside it's covered in spray paint. It's not taken care of at all. And I think the juxtaposition of those two things is just very fascinating visually, and it's also such a good representation of the white privilege that's happening.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the other things I liked about, bringing up the architecture and the buildings and stuff, and I wish they kind of leaned in with this either in this movie or even the second one, and it seemed like this movie, they kind of played with it. Like, they wanted us to think maybe for a little bit that Candyman wasn't real and that it really is a person, because like there's a point where she talks about, actually, if you look at these apartments, these are based off the same ones in Cabrini Green, but these are just nicer versions. But if you pull the medicine cabinet out, there's no wall between units. It's just a medicine cabinet. So I could go into my neighbor's apartment really easily, and it's the same thing in Cabrini Green.
What was her plan with that, by the way? Sorry to cut you off.
I have no idea.
What was her plan with that, by the way?
I don't know.
Because she, like, there's the scene that you're talking about, she explained, which is, like, by the way, huge exposition dump that I had to rewind and rewatch again, because it's just, like, dense with information where she's explaining how her building, was built, and then the city planners realized that it was in too nice of an area to be a project because the view is good. She, like, shows off the view. Blah, blah, blah. And she's talking to a friend of hers. And at the end of the scene, she's like, and I'll show you something even better. And she goes to her bathroom and she pulls the medicine cabinet off the wall, which is just like, it's not even glued. It's just,
it's just resting inside.
Yeah. Like it's a little bit too big for the hole. So it stays in because of the pressure, but you can easily pull it out. And then behind it is just another medicine cabinet. And the point that she's making is that it was like originally shoddy building, and they kind of covered it up. My question is, she takes the medicine cabinet off, and then there's another medicine cabinet behind it that goes into the other apartment. That's what she's trying to show her, but she pushes the other medicine cabinet.
Yeah, she knocks on it,
and then and reveals that there's nobody next door, which I guess she could have known. But wouldn't you have broken the glass on the other medicine cabinet? And also, how are you gonna get the other medicine cabinet back in?
Yeah, if you actually accidentally pushed it all the way. The reason she brought that up was she was trying to say that Candyman isn't real and that it was just a real person killing and not actually coming through, because the legend says you look in the mirror and he comes out of the mirror, but it wasn't that she was actually, like, the real killer was actually just moving from apartment to apartment using that and disappearing. That's why people couldn't find it. So like that brings me to that point I was making, was that like it would have been really interesting if they tried to make it like, maybe Candyman isn't real and it's an actual person. Like, is it supernatural or is it a person? We don't know. But they don't let that hang long enough. Like, the first time she comes back from Cabrini Green, Candyman's waiting for her in a parking lot. And then she goes into a fugue state and wakes up in the other apartment covered in blood with the Rottweiler's head cut off.
Yeah, the movie really takes a turn halfway through. in some
It
places.
just kind of
I think
rips. Like the pacing
But
changes drastically.
Yeah, it becomes like a different movie, which
Yeah.
I kind of like. Like From Dusk Till Dawn is like that. I've written a movie like that. Like there's something very interesting about that, and I don't think that's necessarily a flaw.
No, I don't
this
think
movie.
it's a bad thing.
But it is like an abrupt change and something that doesn't fit into common modern Western storytelling tropes. So
Right.
It feels like it's jarring to the brain, and I think you have to do a little bit of extra work to make sure that people are coming along with you on that ride.
Right. So just to kind of start to wrap this one up, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but like, what is Candyman's code? Because I mean, the movie opens up with his voice, and he says something along the lines of like, "They will say I shed innocent blood, but what's blood for if not for spilling?" or something along those lines. And then he says like something about his hook will kill people. But like the legend says, he kills people who are in the room when you summon him. So like if you and me were summoning him, he would kill us. But like he doesn't kill her. Like he kills Bernadette, the friend.
Right.
And she's, I mean, she's in the room, but she only says the name 4 times and she chickens out. And then Helen says it the 5th time.
Right.
But after the Rottweiler scene, after she's had a close call where they thought maybe she might be a murderer, but they let her go from the police station and go home because the husband bails her out. Bernadette gets killed. So then she gets committed to a psychiatric hospital. And then like Candyman goes and kills the doctor and breaks the window so she can escape. Like, what is his actual code? And he says like, you forced me to spill innocent blood to get the name, but it like all these killings are senseless. And like you said, it just makes her look like the bad guy.
The doctor one, Dr. Burke, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, that's interesting because Burke is the name of the guy in the new movie too. The doctor one is weird to me because the doctor was ripped open through the spine with a hook.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like she is not physically capable of that.
Right.
There's no way. And
Right.
so she was like hopping out the window to get away from the police. And I was like, this is, I mean, I don't know if it proves that you didn't do it, but this is evidence on your side. You know what I mean?
Right.
Especially if the window's open too.
Yeah.
And they can like, the blood was sprayed on the front of her and like, it would have been all around her
The
chair.
blood splatter. You get Dexter Morgan in there and he'd be like, she didn't do it.
I know that she's been in a medically induced coma for a month and she's not thinking straight. So I guess you could chalk it up to that. But I was like yelling at the TV. I was like, this is ridiculous. She's not physically capable of that. Why is she?
Right.
Why would anyone think that she did that?
But you know, the movie ultimately ends. She goes in and she saves baby Anthony. She drags herself through the fire. She gets 3rd degrees, burns all over her body. She gets killed, saving the baby. And then at the last shot of the movie, this is the only part of the movie I remembered. It was the husband who's been unfaithful this whole time. Like there are several times where she calls him, like when she's getting arrested or when she's in danger, and he doesn't pick up, and it's because he's banging some of his students.
Well, now, Mike, we don't know that he's banging any of the students, and it is just implied that it's the one.
That's true. Okay, he's banging a student,
but we don't even know if he's banging her.
She was moving in.
Yeah, but that
in
was
that
like,
month that she was in the hospital.
That was like a month later. You move on.
You know that's what he was doing. But anyways, like he's got his new girl and she's like cooking dinner and he goes into the bathroom and he's just like, Helen.
Oh, I've made a horrible mistake.
He says it fine and she comes out and she's all burned and everything and she kills him. So the implication is that like she is now the new Candyman.
Right. But how would anyone know to say Helen 5 times? Like, it's the original question.
It makes sense for him.
Right.
Kind of thing, but like, how is this going forward? And now this movie had 2 more sequels that came out like 95 and 99 that didn't do very well, that weren't as well received. And you know, one of them had a little bit more of the backstory of his love life, you know what created him. But like the sequels take place in like New Orleans. They don't really make sense. They're critically panned. They're panned by audiences. So the new 2021, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, kind of ignores the 2nd and 3rd movie and is a direct sequel to this one. But anything else you've got for this? I've got a few factoids for you if you want to hear some.
I had a couple lines that I wrote down that I thought were funny.
Hit me.
The kid is telling her the story about Candyman attacking the mentally impaired kid in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And cutting off his dick.
That's right. That was so fucking weird.
Yeah, and the kid says, "Can't fix that. Better off dead."
Yeah. That kid was creepy though.
Yeah, he's
and then
good.
like he doesn't like warn her when the gang member who's pretending to be Candyman comes in, and like they can't. Well, another white privilege example, like Anne Marie, who's Anthony's mom, mentions that she heard the murder, which prompted the newest versions of the Candyman story, and that they called 911 and the cops just never came. But here, a white woman gets hit by a black man. Somebody calls the cops, and they're there minutes.
Right.
And this guy gets arrested.
Speaking of that scene and white privilege, she's also very germ privileged. She's just walking in there, touching shit covered doors and stuff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And actually, in that same scene is the other line that I wrote down. The what is he? The faux Candyman.
Yeah.
The gang guy. He says, "We hear you looking for Candyman, bitch."
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a.
I got a couple more quick ones I can.
Go.
She was very chipper for being brutally attacked. Like 2 scenes later, she was like,
look, my eye swelling's going down.
Yeah,
I'm almost
she's
normal.
like, I'm getting published. I'm going to cook you dinner, honey. Blah blah blah. I feel like.
Oh, that's right. She got semi-famous for this.
Yeah, I feel like she would have been a little bit more traumatized.
White privilege, man.
Waking up in Anne Marie's apartment, that whole scene is genuinely terrifying. That was probably
absolutely
the scariest moment in the movie.
That's the part where the guy we're calling Brian started crying.
Yeah, I mean, I started crying too. No, I didn't, but I get it, man. No shame on Brian.
So
I think they shot this in Chicago. It takes place in Chicago.
They actually filmed some parts in Cabrini Green, and like the gang members kind of like hassled them, so they ended up having to agree to put some of the gang members in the movie for protection.
Yeah, I think this film's much closer to real life than people realize it is.
Yeah.
I brought that up though because I think that one of the tunnels in the middle, I guess, is the same tunnel as the Dark Knight Joker.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Car thing.
Yeah.
At the end they bury her with the hook.
Yeah.
I feel like she wouldn't want to be buried with the hook.
Yeah, it's odd. It's an odd choice.
If I was like a surfing guy and I went surfing and I was attacked by a shark and the shark like ate most of my body and I died from my wounds, I wouldn't want to be buried with,
the shark's jaw.
A shark jaw or whatever.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, that was a weird choice for Anne Marie, but I think I just want to say overall, like I really enjoyed this, but I felt disconnected from it in the second half. And I don't know if I was distracted or if there's just some of these things that we were talking about that kind of took me out of the moment. But after the movie, I went and read about it on Wikipedia and just sort of sat with it for a little bit and was feeling like I enjoyed it more than the moment the credits started rolling.
I agree.
So I think maybe I was a little bit in the wrong mood for it.
I feel the same way when I watched it. I was like not ready to watch a movie, but I'm like, I have to get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so I think I would definitely like to rewatch it, like maybe even later this year.
Yeah,
I'd like to revisit it.
What's funny is I'm not
supposed to be Eddie Murphy. Name. Boom.
Oh, Tony Todd plays Candyman, and he's fantastic. Like he has almost like a Shakespearean way of like when he delivers his lines.
He's really great in this.
Fucking great. And he's also if you don't know who he is, he's also in Final Destination. He's the guy who works in the morgue and explains to everybody like that death is after him. I have a guy that I used to work with when I went to UC Davis, and I'm still friends with him on Facebook. We talk pretty regularly, but he looks exactly like Tony Todd. But he's the nicest guy in the world. Tony Todd might be
cool as fuck.
He might be the nicest guy in the world, but he's scary. My friend is not a scary guy, so it is what it is. But let's transition. What have you been up to, bud?
Well, sir, I've been revisiting BoJack Horseman. I did not finish the last season, so
where are you at now? Because you mentioned last episode you were just starting it.
I'm almost done now. I'm like
nice.
2 episodes away. I'll finish it tonight.
Nice.
Yeah, I held off on the last season, and I've just been rewatching it.
It's rough.
It's so good,
fantastic.
Man. You know what's funny? I was told by multiple people that the last season is like super rough, and it like doesn't let up and stuff. And I see why they say that, but I think that it was like hyped up for me as being like really fucking difficult.
I think the season before, is there 6 seasons or 5 seasons?
6.
Yeah, I think the 5th season is probably the darkest overall.
Yeah, I think like the second season, it really is 16 episodes, and it really like hits the gas.
It does.
Not even hits the gas. It like takes a turn. Right.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So the first like 8 episodes, I think, were not quite as heavy.
Yeah, I agree.
I saw Shang-Chi. We talked about that.
Yep, we've got a Patreon episode up, so if you guys want to hear what we have to say about that, go to Patreon.
That's right. I watched that movie Game Over, Man.
Game Over. Which one's that one?
That's the Workaholics guys, and they're doing like stoners. And
Oh, it's like Die Hard stoner. I watched part of it. It has full frontal male nudity if you're into that kind of thing. I didn't finish it. I was watching it.
I really enjoyed it.
Like a year and a half ago, and then like I think Netflix went down, and then I started it up again, and then Katrina came home, and I just never went back to it.
I really enjoyed it.
I generally don't like that the main guy in that movie. I find it pretty annoying. Yeah.
No, I kind of agree. And I like I'm not really a Workaholics fan. Like I don't have anything against it. It just didn't do anything for me when it came on. It felt too much like Always Sunny, I think.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, man. Then King of the Hill, I started watching.
I started watching that a couple months ago and like watched like the first 5 episodes and then fell off of it and haven't been able to get back into it. But I didn't really watch it when it was on originally.
Yeah, I think I tried to because I like Beavis and Butthead and I love The Simpsons. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. And I just like, I couldn't connect with it. And rewatching it now, it kind of makes sense because it...
I'll just shotgun a few. Some of these I've just forgot to mention last time, but I watched Blythe Spirit, the original one. They just remade it like last year with, I'm blanking on his name, but he's in Eurovision and Beauty and the Beast and Legion. Yes, him. So they just remade it. So maybe we'll explore that some other time. But Blythe Spirit is fucking hilarious. It's about a man who gets remarried and then they have a seance and they accidentally summon his ex-wife and hilarity ensues. And it's really funny. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's very clever and witty and kind of risque for a movie that came out in like the 40s or early 50s. But it's good. I fell asleep watching Ted, the one with the CGI teddy bear.
Yeah, how's that hold up?
Not very well. Ted is the teddy bear himself is kind of like a sexual predator. Like it's kind of fucked up the shit that he does. But I mean, it's funny. Like there are some genuinely funny moments in that movie still. But I ended up falling asleep.
Speaking of not holding up, by the way, I tried watching Austin Powers. I texted you about it.
Yeah.
And that didn't go very well.
It's funny. I watched all 3 while I was setting up my projector, and I enjoyed them.
The Will Ferrell and brown face just kind of...
Yeah, there are definitely problematic moments, but overall, I still enjoyed the films. I watched Demolition Man, and
fuck yeah,
it's fun. It's a fun movie.
That movie rules.
Yeah, it's great. I watched Free Guy again. Kat wanted to go see it, and so we went and saw that.
I got to see that still.
It's fun. Like I didn't like it as much the second time, but a lot of the things that I enjoyed the first time were like surprises that I didn't expect. So like I knew everything that was coming, so nothing was as surprising.
How did she like it?
She thought it was fine. Like she's not a big Ryan Reynolds person, but she laughed quite a bit through the movie. I think she liked it more than she's letting on, but it is what it is. We watched the second season of the movies that made us. So this season they talked about Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, Jurassic Park, and I don't remember the 4th movie, but all 4 fantastic movies. Didn't learn a ton. Like most of those things I already knew, but it was still fun just reminiscing about these classic movies. And then I talked about this the last episode, but I ended up cutting it out because the episode was running long. But I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima, and it is by far one of the greatest video games I've ever played. Like I've just bombed through the first part of the story, and then the expansion pack came out like the day that I beat the game. Went back and did that. Now I'm going back through and playing all the side quests. Like in the last month and a half, I've easily put 40 hours in, if not more, and I've still easily got 10 to 15 more hours of content, and it's fucking fantastic.
I've been wanting to go back to Fallout 4 lately. I'm like so close to finishing it, and I just kind of fell off.
Fallout 4 is a fucking great game too. And I think that's it. I think that's everything major. So I think we should get into the 2021.
Yeah, let's do it.
Obviously, the 2021 movie is brand new. It's still in theaters, so spoilers. Be warned.
Spoilers.
It is what it is. But go watch the movie, come back, or just listen to this. But don't add us because we spoiled it. Because duh, we're spoiling it.
Yeah,
idiots. I'm just kidding. You guys aren't idiots. Thanks for listening and supporting the show. And I just want to say this before you summarize it, but one of the things, going back to one of our first episodes, actually, I think the first episode you did was Doom, and you talked about how you love when they mess with the Universal logo. And this movie did that for you.
Yeah.
So I was really excited for you when I watched that movie. I'm like, and I knew I watched it before you. I'm like, Alex is going to love this.
I was wondering how many people in the audience were like looking up at the projector room, like, "Hey, it's backwards! You gotta fix it. It's backwards."
But yeah, that was pretty cool. But why
I
don't
love
you summarize this one for us?
Yeah. Up-and-coming artist Anthony McCoy moves to a gentrified artist haven Cabrini Green neighborhood. He's struggling to find meaning at his art when he hears the story of Helen Lyle. He investigates Cabrini Green and discovers the legend of Candyman. Spreading the legend of Candyman through his art brings him success, but due to an unknown connection to the Candyman, it also unleashes a chain of events that changes Anthony and all those around him. Ellipsis.
Ooh. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I'm just going to say to the beginning.
We're going to nitpick some stuff. So, that's what we do on here, whatever. But up front, like, as I was watching this movie, especially in the first half, I was just like, fuck, man. Like, these are the kinds of horror movies that I like to see. Like, it's fucking gorgeous. It has this, like, the control of tone and theme is really fucking impressive for
Absolutely.
Nia DaCosta as a director.
And she hasn't done much. Like, this is her first, like, major project. And she's going to be directing the Captain Marvel the Captain Marvel sequel, The Marvels. So good for her.
Yeah. Really impressive. Is it debut for her? Is this her first feature?
I think it's her first feature. She's done some shorts and a couple episodes of some TV. But, yeah, I believe this is her first feature film.
Yeah, very cool. And I also like the first half of the movie. I guess there's less scares. But a lot of it takes place like in broad daylight, and there's some scares that happen in a lot of like creepy stuff that happens in broad daylight.
Yeah, like really, there's only two scenes that I don't know. I guess it's like one long scene, but like there's really only one part of the movie. No, there's two. There's two murders that take place at night, but most of the stuff that's gnarly happens in the day. Yeah, I didn't even notice that, but yeah, you're right. So for the first nitpicky thing that I have that I didn't really understand was when he goes to investigate Cabrini Green. He takes his camera with him, and I thought, he's an artist. That's smart. He's taking his camera, he's taking pictures, so he has some references when he goes to make his paintings and his sculptures and all the things that he's doing. But he gets stung by a bee, and obviously bees are a big part of Candyman. We didn't really talk about bees in the previous one. Factoid, Tony Todd got paid, he negotiated a bonus every he got $1,000 for every time he got stung by a bee, and so across the first three movies, he got $23,000 from bee stings. So, also the bees are specifically bred and timed where they were born 12 hours before the scenes that they'd be filming, because that's the point where they're big enough to look like bees, but small enough that their stingers aren't like fully developed, so they don't hurt as much and they don't have the venom apparently. So interesting. Had no idea. But he gets stung by a bee. And then, he kind of doesn't really notice it. And then, like, several hours later, somebody points out, like, oh, you've got a scab on your hand. He's like, oh, yeah, I got stung by a fucking bee. And then throughout the rest of the movie, like, you see his hand starts to go through necrosis. And then it's up to his elbow. And then eventually it's up to his neck before he goes to the hospital. But throughout this movie, like, he's getting famous because he has this art exhibit that nobody really likes. But then somebody dies. And then all of a sudden people are talking about him. And he's all happy because he's on the news and everything. But nobody fucking notices his, like, arm is rotting off of his body.
He, like, how does his girlfriend not notice? And they make a point early on of showing that they have a healthy sexual relationship.
Yeah, because he's fucking ripped.
His girlfriend doesn't, well, and also we see them fuck.
Yeah,
his girlfriend doesn't notice that his hand is covered in scabs.
Yeah, it's fucking gross.
And then he goes and does that interview with the art critic who's very, like, condescending and holier than thou. And, like, how does that type of person miss a detail like this guy's hand is falling off?
Yeah, it's fucking weird. So that I didn't understand. I didn't understand why that was happening, and I also didn't understand, like, towards the end of the movie. Should we just spoil the end right now, just so it's easier to talk about? Yeah. Okay. So he meets this guy named Burke, who is a resident of Cabrini Green, who was been there as born and raised, and he witnessed a crime, or he witnessed police brutality for someone they thought was a Candyman, and they changed the origin of Candyman in this a little bit, and we'll get into it.
I think it was for somebody that they thought was abducting or
exactly.
Putting razor blades in
candy. Yeah, and that's why they call it Candyman. And
razor blades and children in candy.
Yeah, razor blades and candy that children were eating.
Eventually they end up in the children.
Yeah. So he witnesses this, and then he witnesses the real Candyman, but it's the same guy that he noticed. So we'll get into that. But for whatever reason, this guy, William Burke, who kind of acts as like a friend to Anthony and tells him about the history and tells him about Candyman and everything, he ends up abducting Anthony and the girlfriend at the end of the movie, and has this like grand plot that he wants to stop gentrification, and he thinks the best way to do that is to reinvigorate the legend of Candyman. And it seems like it's ambiguous as to whether or not throughout the movie that he believes the legend, but then by the end of it, obviously he does, because he says that he saw his little sister, or not his little sister, his big sister, get killed by Candyman. Right. So his whole plan is to make Anthony the new Candyman, and he is setting him up to get killed by the police, so that way the legend goes on. But what I don't understand is, like, why did Anthony go into like this fugue state where he was able to just be abducted? He was mindless. The guy cut off his arm, puts a hook in, chases his girlfriend, and like nothing happens. Like, I didn't understand
Anthony
that.
doesn't react to it, you mean?
Yeah, and like Anthony becomes throughout the movie more and more like disassociative. Like, he's not present, and his priorities are out of whack. But like, why? I don't understand like why that happened. Like, I wish there was a little bit more of an explanation as to more of it than just, oh, you were kidnapped by Candyman 30 years ago or 25 years ago or however long it was.
Right. And this is not answering your question, but you touched on it. And I feel like there must be an answer for this, because I feel like this movie is so aware of what it's doing, and it's so message based. And this seems like such an obvious thing. So this is 100% on me, or on us, if you agree with me. I'm reading the Wikipedia, and it says Burke plans to have the police gun down Anthony to create a new legend with the Candyman as an instrument of vengeance rather than a symbol of black pain and suffering.
Right.
So like, on the surface, I get that. That's Burke's plan.
That makes sense. That tracks based off what we know about him and the other stories he said. And we'll get into those in a little bit. But
my question is more about, I guess it's more about the original movie. Why, if I'm trying to like choose my words here. If it's a symbol of black pain and suffering, and it's a legend within Cabrini Green or within black neighborhoods, or that specific black neighborhood, it seems like it would only attack black folks in the first place, right?
I guess. Well, like, if you're saying that this is a symbol, like he's trying to change it to
maybe that's
black vengeance versus black pain, and this is like, the thing that I don't understand.
Sorry, I've got the words I want to use.
Oh, okay.
The Candyman is in the original movie, it's Tony Todd, who was lynched and came back and killed anyone that said Candyman in the mirror 5 times or whatever. But these movies are so like focused on folklore, and it makes it seem like it's so specific to that one part of Chicago,
right,
to Cabrini Green, that he would only be summoned by black children.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, in the first place, why is it
traditionally that would have been correct? Yeah. So
like, why hasn't it always been an instrument of vengeance?
Right. And that's the thing. And so like, this movie, I guess we should go into the details a little bit more.
Maybe that's what this movie is trying to do.
I guess. So like, Burke mentions that he was a little kid, and at first I thought it was the Jake kid from the original one, but we find out it wasn't. But he and it also makes sense it was the 70s versus the 90s. I don't know why I thought that initially, but he tells the story of this one guy who was actually very nice, and he was lost his hand, and he was giving out candy, and he screamed, and so the cops came. There just happened to be cops in the neighborhood that day, so they come running, and they heard about a guy who was putting razor blades in candy, and here's a guy giving candy, and he's got one arm, and he's a big scary black guy. So they beat the shit out of him, and he dies. And then sure enough, the candy is still coming, and razor blade candy is still coming. So they killed an innocent man, and so he becomes the new Candyman. And so what's weird is he sees, there's right before the end of the movie, when he's explaining to the girlfriend why he's doing this, there's another flashback, and he explains that his little sister, I keep saying little, I don't know why. His big sister summons Candyman and is getting murdered, and he opens the door, and he sees the same guy that, he accidentally got killed, and kills his sister, and then like puts his hook up to tell him to, be quiet, but it looks like the same guy, right?
Yeah. So
he basically explains at a different point in the movie to Anthony. He goes, so the first one was the Tony Todd version. I can't remember the character's name.
Daniel, I'm going to
Robinette or something like that, right?
Yeah.
He was the original one, and he explains the same story that we already talked about. Rich artist, former slave, bangs a rich white chick, dad gets pissed, has him killed. And then he explains, like, rapid fire. He explains like 3 different stories, like 3 different black people who have been killed in horrific ways by white people, and basically says Candyman is the entity, but it's really like a hive mind, and that there have been multiple Candyman kind of thing. And so I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It kind of conflicts. That kind of conflicts with the first movie, but that's interesting. But we see the same, the original guy giving out candy from this movie kill as Candyman, and then at the end of this movie, after Anthony is killed, like why did I say Burke's plan is works. Like, he sets it up to look like he attacked his girlfriend and attacked him. So the cops shoot him on sight, and then another pretty fucked up scene, but the cops tried to force the girlfriend to say, you saw him, he had the hook, he rushed us, and like, we had to do it. And if you don't say that, well, we're going to say you were an accomplice and you held down Burke while your boyfriend killed him, and you're going to go to jail too. And so she looks at the rearview mirror in the car and says Candyman 5 times. And then Anthony comes and he butchers the cops. And he's surrounded by beasts. It's really effective. It's really creepy. It's brutal. It's fast. Like, it's really effective. And he looks like Anthony. And then he kind of does the same thing. He puts up the hook and is like, hey, be quiet. Or not be quiet, but he puts up the hook and kind of waves and says, spread the story, or whatever it was. Like, say my name. Tell everyone. And then he morphs into the Tony Todd version.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Like, if the idea is supposed to be he was the original one and we keep having new ones, like, why not just have it look like Anthony? Or if it's really he needs the power, and maybe because after Helen, like, maybe his plan with Helen backfired, because this is throwing out the second and third movie, maybe because at the beginning of the movie they tell the story of Helen, and it's mostly right. Like, the details are a little off. Like, they say she ran into the fire with the baby, but like 90% of the story was right. It's just a few details that were off that makes Helen look like a crazy person. Right. Like, is it maybe he was weakened because the story transitioned to Helen, and that he really needed the legend to come back to be able to take form again?
Yeah, I have no idea. Because
throughout the movie, we see a bunch of grisly murders, but we never actually see who's doing the murders. And actually, we see nobody. Like, we see people picked up by an invisible force and slashed.
Yeah, I mean, we see that when Yaya looks in the mirror. By the way, we got to talk about how fucking good Yaya is in this.
Yaya is gonna take off soon. Like, he was Black Manta.
Let's come back to it.
Doctor, yeah. But
I feel like you see in the mirror, Yaya is occasionally catch a glimpse of himself, and he is the Candyman that Burke saw as a kid. Let's call him the second Candyman, I guess. And I think my impression from like looking at those dark images when he appeared in the mirrors early in the movie was that it was the same outfit, and that it was the same version of Candyman. The second. Oh, and
Candyman. That was, you mentioned the outfit. I did appreciate, and this is, testament to Jordan Peele's production. Obviously, this was directed by him. But like, when you look at Us and what's the other one that I can't think of the other one? Get Out. Thank you. Which is a fantastic movie. Like, there's not a wasted frame in that movie. Like, every single frame in that movie is symbolic to something. And like, Jordan Peele,
I felt that way about this for the most part.
So did I. And so like, there's just certain things, clearly everything has a meaning that just went over my head that I don't get. And like, over, the next couple of years, as people start asking him, hey, did this mean this? Because he's confirmed. And anytime somebody like has a theory about what something means, and if it gets to him, he'll go on Twitter or whatever and be like, yep, that's exactly what that means. So there's clearly hidden things that we're not going to get. And you mentioned like he looks in the mirror. For a little bit, I thought, oh, maybe he goes into a fugue state and he's the one doing the killing. Or maybe it's just him going and doing the killing and he's losing his mind, and they were going to change the story again and make it like he's the monster, like he's going crazy and he's actually killing people, and then he transitions to being Candyman. I don't know. I didn't know where they were going to go with it, but you're right. There's several times when people are getting killed, he's staring at the mirror. And I was like, is he channeling this? Like, what's going on? And there was also like things like bees would be like tapping the other side of the mirror. Like, he'd see a bee hitting the mirror.
Cool effect.
Yeah, super cool effect. But like, what was actually going on? Like, was he just witnessing these murders, or was he responsible for them?
Also,
I don't know.
Like, how do you decide which Candyman gets called? Because the Tony Todd version was killed in the 1890s or something.
Yeah.
And he's the one that appears 100 years later in 1991 or whatever.
Right.
But meanwhile, this other version was in 1977.
Right.
So like when when Burke's big sister summoned Candyman in 1977 or 78, why didn't the Tony Todd version appear?
Right. That's what I don't get, or any of the other versions that we've been referenced and saw little puppet shows for their origins. Yeah. And once again, why did, like, maybe the only thing I can think of, this is my theory, I could be wrong, people tell me if I'm wrong, maybe I missed something, is I think that X amount of people need to get killed and the legend starts to grow before Tony Todd comes back and like assumes the mantle. That's the only thing I can think of, is because they like
that's not a bad theory, but it's also like not hinted at in the movie.
Well, Bert kind of hints at it. He goes, the original guy is Candyman, but all these other people are like hive extensions of him.
I didn't hear that. Okay.
Yeah, so he says something along those lines. So I think that's that's the way I twist it, is that maybe because right away, Tony or Anthony killed a bunch of cops, and at that point, she believes the story. I think maybe it's like Santa Claus and a bunch of Santa Claus, like the end of Elf. Like, you need to believe, and like the belief gives them power, or Tinkerbell kind of thing. Like, if you don't believe, they die. But in that moment, she truly believed, and so he got the power back. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, listen. Having said all that, I like where the movie ends. That Candyman is an instrument of vengeance. I think arriving at that point is cool and relevant and interesting.
I hope we get another one. We don't need it.
I like that they got there. I feel like we will. I feel like it's set up to do that. And I mean, look how much we're talking about the backstory. I think there's plenty to explore.
Well, and what's interesting, like, this movie technically made its money back already, which is great for the pandemic. So it cost like $25 million. It's made $64 million so far. There was some publicity for this, not a ton. Like, we're in Los Angeles, so I've seen some buses and some billboards. But it's only been in theaters for like a week and a half. So, and
I think you're right about Yaya. I think he's gonna really blow up in the next year or two.
I mean, so between this, he's gonna be Morpheus in the Matrix movie coming up.
Exactly.
He was Dr. Manhattan, Black Manta. He's coming back for Aquaman 2. He was Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen. So, and he's fantastic. My man's
gonna have like 4 franchises going at the same time.
He's really good. He deserves it. He's really, really good. He was the best part of Aquaman. That movie fucking sucks, but he's fantastic at it.
I think he's gonna get a really solid drama role.
I hope so. I really hope so. He deserves it. He works. I've seen him in some interviews. He seems really nice. I hope he gets what he deserves in a good way.
Also, one more note about Yaya. That dude's fucking gorgeous. Like,
yeah, he's a good looking dude.
God damn, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's.
I came home and I started lifting weights.
Lifted weights and started smoking. Lit up a cigarette.
Do I have to smoke too? Is that the problem? And we sort of talked about the body horror in this movie, and it's not explained a ton. I don't know that it needs to be, but it also like wasn't super clear what they were.
Why it was happening
to him.
Yeah,
but it looked fucking fantastic.
It did.
There's a scene where he like pulls a scab up from his hand, and I was like, oh man, that's so well
and he pulls off his fingernail too. Ugh.
Yeah.
I do.
They like hint. They showed a glimpse of it, like they hinted at it earlier, and then by the end of the movie, you see that he's becoming a beehive.
Yeah.
So fucking cool.
Yeah. One of the other things that I really liked about this, and I think this also leads to maybe why Tony Todd came back, was, and I think this was fantastic, but in a really great way of spreading this even better than the original one, is he creates the art show, and it's all around Candyman, and he has this, like, the main exhibit is like a mirror, a medicine cabinet, and it has like a little note that says, say my name, we invite you to play along with this, folk legend, say the name Candyman 5 times, and most people are kind of, whatever, but like a high school girl sees it, takes the pamphlet home, and then later on at school, she does it with a bunch of friends, a few people run off, and like, 4 or 5 children are murdered brutally in a bathtub.
That was a really good scene.
Or bathtub, in a bathroom. It was fantastic.
And they I guess actually we see them harassing the black girl in the stall. So we're given, like, in horror movies, when people are killed, it's usually a sense of like comeuppance,
some sin that they're guilty of.
Yeah, exactly. And these are children.
Yeah,
like they're
A lot of children are killed in this
They couldn't
movie.
be guilty of that much. You know what I mean? But also, they very purposefully show that they're harassing this young black girl.
Yeah.
So they're also
And then
not
we had
angels.
the art dealers also get killed. They get killed having sex. They're sinners.
They tried to. They didn't. I don't think he got it in.
No, I don't think so either. And the thing is, like, the scenes were this expanded on something that happened in the original. Like, there's points where Tony Todd is in the room with Helen, but like it's on camera and
Yeah.
it's empty. In this, like, we're seeing it. Like, we see things in mirrors, but they just appear to be held up by an invisible force. Like,
Yeah,
we don't
really
actually
well done.
see that. So I thought that's interesting. So that's another, like, is he a conduit? Is he controlling it? Who knows? Maybe it's just he's not powerful enough to have a physical presence. I don't know. But I think between that, because they mention it on the news, between his art, he kind of blows up. They mention his art on the news. All these different things. It makes sense that this legend is reborn. And, like, Burke kind of got what he wanted. He didn't want to necessarily get killed, but, the Candyman legend's back.
Yeah.
And this whole movie is just, I thought was fantastic. It was also the gentrification thing. And, like, he, Anthony talks about gentrification. And he's like, he's kind of acting like holier than thou. Like, you guys are taking things from, like, the black community. And I don't remember who it was, but somebody tells him, I don't know if it was a critic or a cop or a friend, but they're like, you're the reason why this is getting gentrified. Like, across the country, these urban neighborhoods or these primarily minority neighborhoods are around. And then you artists come in because it's cheap, because you guys don't have real jobs. So you go and you just, go around, you drink, you smoke, you do your art. And then all the white people come in, and he goes, like, if you didn't come in with your art, the white people wouldn't have come. So you're the instrument of gentrification. And I thought that was a really interesting.
Yeah, but then
bring up.
he refutes that back.
He does. Oh, he absolutely refutes it back. Yeah, and I think it was fantastic. What was his argument back?
So a little bit later in the movie, she says it's the art critic, and she says that
That's
to him
right.
at the show. And then the killing happens, and all of a sudden he's like a hot commodity.
And
because
she loves the art.
It's a story. And then she has him over to her apartment for an intimate interview. And she's like, super interested in him and like fawning over him now. And he's kind of like taken aback by that. And the point comes back around, and he says, yeah, well, artists are attracted to it because the government cuts off the part of the city where all of the people of color are, the ghetto. They create the ghetto.
That's right.
They cut, they talk about this in the first movie too, where
Yeah,
like,
that's
Cabrini
right.
Green was on the other side of the highway. It's like separated from the city. So he says the city cuts off the ghetto, lets it starve to death. And then once everything is cheap and available, they invite artists to come in and
To draw the white
say,
people in.
and they say,
Yeah.
if you stick around for a couple years, you'll get a Whole Foods.
That's right. That's right. No, it was fucking fantastic. Perfect commentary. Before we wrap it up, oh, go ahead.
Just one more point about that. I think it's really well done. In movies, you like craft arguments through characters' viewpoints and stuff, and it's really well done in the context of what we're talking about, because she doesn't not have a point. She's just being dishonest, or she doesn't understand the entire context of the situation. So you hear her say that, and I think something clicks in your brain where it's like, well, she's not wrong. That sounds fucked up, but it's not totally wrong. And then when he comes back, he's like, yeah, but here's the information that you conveniently left out.
No,
And
it's
like,
perfectly
oh,
formed.
yeah. So many people don't have all of the information, but they still make these arguments about it.
Her death
and
was.
other people believe it because it sounds good.
No, you're right. Like, when they said at the beginning, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good point. And then when he refutes it, I'm like, that's a better point.
It's the same thing that like Republicans are good at doing. Republicans are really good at framing an argument so that it's very hard to like prove them wrong, and you have to like come prepared to those things, because what they're doing is leaving out information.
Yeah, absolutely. Her death was my favorite one. Like, it was a really cool shot, because it's like it's an exterior shot of the window, and then it zooms out. And then you see her lift it up, then it zooms out further and further and further and further as she's getting killed.
I was like waiting for it, and then it didn't happen, and I was like, oh, maybe
did
that's
she
not what they're
summon him?
doing.
Because like
and then she did.
She would have been the only death that didn't summon.
He challenged her to do it, and then she sort of thought about it, and then we didn't see what happened to her in the bathroom. But he was like looking in the mirror and seeing Candyman. So it seemed like
So the
Candyman
implication
was
is that she did it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we didn't
And
explicitly see her
like
do
she summoned him, and then Yaya was like saw Candyman. Candyman was just hanging out with Yaya for a minute, and then once Yaya left,
Got it.
I like saying
Okay.
Yaya, once he left, he was like, all right, time to go.
Got it. Yeah, this was a great movie. Like, I might go watch it again. And
I'll watch it again.
And you know me, like, I'm not a big like scary movie horror film kind of guy, but like this one just has so many questions that I feel like I just missed it. Like there's just details that I blinked or missed it, or I reached into the popcorn bin to get some popcorn right when something important happened. I don't know, but like I was fascinated by this film. It's definitely great. You know, you definitely see Jordan Peele's hand in it. He wrote it. But, you know, there's obviously, it's not exactly like Us or Get Out. Like Nia DaCosta definitely has her spin in it. Like visually, it doesn't look like Jordan Peele's movies, but like symbolically, it feels like it. So I think
it's its own thing, but you feel it.
Yeah, I think it was fantastic. And I miss Jordan Peele being in front of the camera. He's doing fucking incredible work behind the camera and behind the scenes. And I really miss him because like,
those Key and Peele segments have been popping up on my YouTube lately, so I've been watching some of them.
In the last 5 years, I've watched all of Key and Peele 3 times.
That's awesome.
I miss him. And Keanu, so fucking good. I miss him.
I like Keanu.
Yeah. But
we didn't talk about the shadow puppets at all, by the way.
Fucking great.
Yeah, such a cool way
I stayed for the entire credits because the entire credits had the puppet show.
Yeah, same.
To the side, and I didn't expect it. I'm like, oh, okay. I thought this was just going to be during
I stayed for all the credits because I respect the artist, but yeah, that too.
I generally don't stay for the credits.
Right, because you're not a patron of the arts.
I am, but I like have to go to the bathroom after 2.5 hours or 2 hours.
I held my bladder for this entire movie, by the way.
Yeah, so did I.
I have problems with that sometimes, but this one I did it.
But no, it's a fantastic movie, and what's great about it is it's different enough from the original one, and it gives you enough backstory of the original one. You can go into this one cold. It definitely pays off a little bit more early on if you know the original, but you don't need to go and watch the original. You can go into this cold and still enjoy the film.
Yeah. Should we start doing a segment at the end of the episodes? Like I could record a little song, and it's like, did Alex have to pee during the movie?
Almost like a Doogie Howser. We should just get like the Doogie Howser music and like, did Alex have to pee during this movie? Yes, he did.
Did you see the ad for the new version of Doogie Howser?
No, I haven't. But I heard that it pays off.
It's like set in Hawaii, and it's like a young girl.
Yeah, I've heard that. But I heard like the teaser is an homage to him typing on his computer at the end. But I haven't seen the trailer.
I just saw the billboard.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't watched it yet. I mean, I think it goes without saying, based off how much we're glowing about this, and the nitpicking got over really early on this one, and we really just started praising this movie. So I think it goes without saying we both liked this movie. This was definitely a worthy remake, reboot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Retelling, fantastic film.
I think this is how you do it.
Yeah, I agree.
This is a good remake.
Yeah, absolutely. So
remake, reboot.
Go check it out. It's made its money back. I don't know how much this spent on promotional stuff, but like it's probably pretty close to breaking even at this point based off how much it's done. So anyway, thanks guys for listening. Alex, give us your plugs.
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram at dyslexic, DYS Alex IC. I'm on Twitter at Pulisci, PULISCI, and I'm most active currently on TikTok at Pulisci, doing fun music-based content. And you can follow along with the movies that I'm watching on Letterboxd, also at Pulisci. I really need to consolidate all these names. I know we talked about it.
Yeah, you should. And you guys can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at MDXpods. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/MDXpods and support the show. Like I said early on in this episode or in the middle, we did a Shang-Chi episode. We've done Black Widow. We have a bunch of exclusive shows there, so feel free to check that out. If you want to get in contact with us, MDXpods can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at MDXpods. If you want to shoot us an email, it's mdxpods@gmail.com. If you want to give us a call, leave a voicemail, ask us a question, that's 64 MDXpods 1 or 646-397-6371. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back soon. All right, guys. Bye.
Cool.